Let's talk about a Miami Heat mock draft because the NBA Combine concluded about a week and a half ago in Chicago. And the most recent ESPN mock draft from Jeremy Rue and Jonathan Gavoni dropped. Miami obviously has one draft pick right now, at least, in this draft class, that being number 20th overall. And there's an intriguing player that they projected the Heat to take. I'm Nic Rohloff. This is the Heat Report. Let's jump right into it. That player that they projected Miami to take at 20 was Nolan Traore, the point guard from France, played at San Quentin over the past couple of seasons, has been a highly touted international prospect for a couple of years now. And it's very interesting that Traore was mocked to the Heat. Let's talk about what ESPN said on Nolan Traore. Miami has played Tyler Herro on the ball quite a bit, but would benefit from adding a true point guard to hold down the backcourt long term. With a big shot creation void to fill on the roster without Butler, Traore would amount to a big swing if he falls to this spot. Some scouts view him as a lottery-worthy talent, but an inconsistent season in France has put a damper on his draft stock. His size and speed, playmaking ability, and promise as a shooter offers obvious upside if he can put everything together. The far down in the draft, Traore is an attractive pick for a team like the Heat, who have historically had success developing prospects. And I'll say this about Traore. He is certainly an interesting prospect because there is a lot of upside there. I think I've mentioned this in the past on the show when talking about Traore, but he, coming into this season in this draft process, was a projected top 10 pick. Like, if you go back to way too early mock drafts following last year's draft in the summer, when everybody does the way too early mock drafts like in June and July, Traore was in the top 10 consistently. He was right up there as a prospect, as an Edgecombe, as an Ace Bailey, a Cooper Flag. But he had a little bit of a down season for San Quentin over in France, inefficient year, where you can still see a reason and the reasons why Traore is so highly thought of by NBA draft analysts and insiders and GMs. But he just did not put it all together this season. He struggled shooting from the field. He had a little bit too many turnovers as well for a true point guard. But we're going to talk about everything with Traore and if I would take him with the 20th pick. But let me get your thoughts down in the comment section first. Are you interested in Nolan Traore? Type Y for yes, type N for no. It's today's pinned comments. You can hit with YouTube ad break, scroll down, let it play, and answer today's question. I'll say this, I like Traore. I do. And one of the reasons why I like Traore is even though we showed the statistics for him for the 30-game season he had, at least according to Basketball Reference this past year for San Quentin, he really picked up his play to end the regular season the last week of April and into May. The final 5 games of the season, he averaged 16.6 points per game, which is obviously a 5-point increase from his season average. Kept the assist number similar, but still up by almost half an assist at 5.8, and shot a ridiculous 48.1% from beyond the arc. So you can argue here at the end of his regular season, he was really starting to put it together at all ends of the floor. And shout out to the person who made this quote. You can follow him on Twitter. You see his profile and username on the chart here. But when you look at his progression the entire season for San Quentin, green line is 3-point, red line is field goal percentage. It was a tough start, jumped up, came down on the rise, had his lulls in February and March, but then in April and May, just took it to another level, both from the field and from the three-point line. You like to see that number trending up near the end of the season. That might indicate that he is a player that could be someone in the NBA that plays his best basketball when it's necessary in the 16-game type of playoff atmosphere that the Heat absolutely need. Could he be a backcourt partner with Tyler Herro long-term? Well, he certainly has a size profile that treads in a positive direction with that. We know Tyler 6'5", 6'6", not that high of a wingspan, but if you are going to add a lead guard alongside him, either a 2 guard or a point guard, you want someone that has the size to defend multiple positions. And on paper, Traore has that. Now, we'll talk about his lack of defense here in a second, but he's 6'4", at least it's listed online, didn't go through any testing like an NBA Combine, a 6'8" wingspan, which is very good, +4 there, needs to add some weight to his frame slightly. Not going to say too much because he is very, very quick, which is, I think, helpful with his lower weight, but he's got the height and wingspan combination to be a guard that projects very, very nicely alongside Tyler Herro. More breakdown of Traore here in a second, but we are sponsored by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy sports app I play every single day. All you do is pick more or less on a few player stat projections, and you have a shot to win up to 2,000 times your money. Don't miss out on your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your PrizePicks lineup, whether it's points, rebounds, assists. Take your pick of more or less, and you can win up to 2,000 times your cash today. They have so many different deals as well. Taco Tuesday, discounts on some projections from 15 to 25%. Flex Friday, you can play in so many different ways. One right here for me, an entry that I have, more than Miles Turner, 15.5 points per game, more than Tyrese Halliburton, 8.6 assists per game, and less than Karl-Anthony Towns, 11.6 rebounds per game. That is a series-long projection for Knicks Pacers Eastern Conference Finals. Join me and the millions of others on PrizePicks today. Download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, so let's do a quick Traore scouting report here. We'll start with the goods. He's got a great handle and playmaking feel. He's been a lead ball handler for his team at age 17 and 18 years old over the past 2 seasons. And he's got a good feel. You see it, averaging more than 5 assists per game. Now, he does have a little bit of a high turnover rate. We'll talk about that here in a second. But that doesn't concern me, and it doesn't shock me either. He's got a really quick first step off of the dribble. He's explosive, man. And that takes us to our final good here. He's a blur in transition. I've seen many other draft analysts say that he is the quickest player in this draft, and when you watch the tape, you watch the film, when he gets out in transition off of a long rebound, an outlet, or off of a steal, he goes from point A to point B very, very quick. And that is something that the Heat could benefit greatly from as a team that struggles in the half-court offense at times. If they got a point guard that likes to push the tempo and makes people get out of position on the other end of transition, that could be awesome. Now, there are some bads with Nolan Traore. He is an inconsistent shooter at all levels, in the mid-range, in the float game, and from beyond the arc as well. We'll showcase some numbers here on that in a second. He lacks focus defensively, sometimes isn't paying attention to where his man is, sometimes isn't making the right rotations. He's got the tools to be a good defender, but coaches need to get the best out of him, and there's concerns on if he even would like to try to play defense regardless. And another thing is that he does not absorb contact well driving to the basket, often gets bumped off of his spot, which then leads to inefficient shots that he takes in the mid-range, which is why I wanted to talk about this, because this is concerning stuff here this past season for San Quentin and Nolan Traore. If you look at his shooting splits per synergy of last season on different marks, he shot 30.6% on catch and shoot threes, not very good whatsoever, 22.6% off dribble jumper threes, 28.6% off dribble jumper twos. That's really concerning. And a lot of his shot diet consisted of floaters in the pick and roll using his speed. He only made 33.3% of them. That is just another indictment of that efficiency we talked about earlier, where he shot 39% from the field and 30% for three over the 30 games for San Quentin. So he does have a lot of holes in his scoring game, but one thing that he is really good at and how he is able to average double-digit points per game overseas, despite those inefficiencies, is that he is unbelievable in transition. We talked about how he is a blur. Well, he's also solid in the half court. He made 57.2% of his layups this season, which isn't bad for an 18-year-old playing in a professional league over in France. He shot 65% on twos in transition, mentioned that transition opportunity he could bring to the Heat. And weirdly enough, I don't know why you could try to explain this, but as we mentioned how poorly he shot from three as a whole, off dribble, off catch, he did shoot 7 of 10 from three in transition. I don't know if it's because transition threes are wide open, no one around you. I can't really point to a direct reason. Maybe it goes back to getting his legs into him more when you have those looks in transition from three. But I know it's a small sample size. Shooting 7 of 10 from three in transition is really, really impressive. So you do think there are some things to build on with his ability to shoot the basketball. More breakdown here and closing up the show in a second, but make sure you do subscribe to the channel because with the draft being about a month away, we will continue to break down the latest rumors, news, and more around the Miami Heat. Join the channel today as we make the push for 23,000 subscribers. We talked about how he is a good playmaker, has good feel to his game, but does need to improve on his decision-making because he turned the ball over quite a bit over his last 2 seasons. He had a 20.4% turnover percentage last season for San Quentin, and then this year he had a 19.2% turnover percentage. So it improved by a full percent point, which is nice. And I'm not looking too much into this because he is only 18 years old. He is playing against professionals overseas, and you're just naturally going to turn the ball over a little bit more. But that percentage needs to obviously decrease at the next level. Final word on Traore here. I'd certainly consider him at 20. I think there's a really high chance he's off the board before the Heat are selecting, just due to his speed and his upside. And a team like the Brooklyn Nets, who are honestly picking right in front of Miami at 19, why wouldn't they take the shot on Traore since they're not looking to compete now? You can bring him in and develop. And I think that's something Heat fans would have to realize as well. There is a ton of upside with Traore, and if you drafted him at 20, I would like that because of the high upside play that could really impact us 2 or 3 years down the line. But you have to be patient with his development, and I don't think you would and could expect him to be some day one impact guy in the NBA for the Heat as a starting guard. I just don't foresee that. And especially how Erik Spoelstra prides himself on defense and only will play you if you can be serviceable defensively and you have a good feel for the game. Is Traore that? I don't know, so it might take a while for him to get consistent reps for Miami, but the upside is certainly there. Let's round out the show with this. Guards at 20. If the Heat ultimately drafted a guard at the 20th pick, I think it would be one of these 5 guys. Now, maybe you could throw Walter Clayton Jr. in there as well from Florida. He was just off my list here, probably the 6th guard, because I do think they really like Cam Jones from Marquette, who they've done some work on. But I would say Traore, LeBaron Philon, Tahad Pettiford, Ben Seraph, all 4 of those guys could be in play for the Heat at 20. They could go with a big, they go with a guard, they go with a wing. They're so desperate for talent and upside at any position that I think they could go in any direction when we're talking about this in late June. But if they went with a guard at 20, just assuming by other people's boards, like Agor Demen's off the board, some other players are off the board, I could see it being one of these 5 guys. And let me ask you this. Who are you thinking? If you were to pick a guard at number 20, which one would you want the most? Some of you might say Walter Clayton. I don't think it's a good idea to draft Clayton, but that's just me. But if it was one of those 5, let me know which one you would prefer. As highly as I think of Nolan Traore, I have come to the conclusion that I just really like LeBaron Philon. And if you follow me on Twitter, I tweeted out a couple weeks ago that I'm getting very, very close to saying, I know it's very early, Tahad Pettiford should be the pick for the Heat at 20 due to his athleticism, his shot making, his handling, his burst of speed. But I've actually not cooled on him. I've just really become a fan of Philon, a 6'4 guard, 6'6 wingspan. When I watch him play, he can be an on-ball creator. He can play off-ball. He just reminds me so much of Andrew Nembhard, who has been just an amazing off-ball secondary ball handler for the Indiana Pacers, the Tyrese Halliburton. And I'm not saying he will be him, but that's the type of role I could see him having. And if the Heat wanted a guard, I'd really like LeBaron Philon at 20, but I wouldn't complain with a Traore, a Pettiford, or even a Ben Seraph, who I think is a very solid prospect as well. All right, that'll do it for this episode of the Heat Report. Appreciate everybody watching. Enjoy your Memorial Day if you still are watching, and make sure you hit that sub button if you haven't already, because we're dropping daily content around the Miami Heat.